House will come back to order. This House will come back to order. Mr. Clerk, you want to ring the bell? This House will come back to order. The clerk will read the caption to a group of privilege resolutions.
Recognizing and commending Georgia Women of Achievement, recognizing the importance of civil discourse and better arguments, recognizing and commending Rashad Jamal Taylor on his outstanding public service as a political consultant and legislator, recognizing and commending the public service career of Marie Hawkins Merritt upon her retirement, recognizing and commending Sally Jackson Atkins, recognizing and commending Velma L. Rucker, recognizing June 6, 2020 as Women's Golf Day, recognizing Given in Action Incorporated, commending Peanut Proud Incorporated, and recognizing March 28, 2020 is Peanut Proud Incorporated Day at the state capitol, recognizing and commending Alive Home Care, congratulating the Westwood Lady Wildcat basketball team for winning the 2020 GISA Class AA State Basketball Championship, recognizing and commending the African Women in Leadership Organization, recognizing and commending Camp Sunshine, commending the Dutchtown High School Boys Class 5A 2020 State Champions, recognizing October 9, 2020 as Pandas Awareness Day at the state capitol, and for other purposes. That completes the reading of the privilege resolutions.
Is there any objection to adopting the privilege resolutions? The chair hears none, and the resolutions are adopted. Okay, I know people are sort of wondering where we are. You didn't go talk to a lobbyist during the lunch break to find out? One thing I know is that we are going to do today, as we do crossover day normal, we will be in session tomorrow, but we'll have some instructions about that later on. And then we're still working out some details on where we go from there. But again, I won't repeat what I said this morning. The protection of the health and best interest of the members and staff and those that work here is going to be paramount, both to the Lieutenant Governor and the Governor and myself, and we're having some good discussions together about the best path forward. So, depending on the announcements, and I mention this to you because those of you that have bills on either the rules calendar that was set earlier in the week or the supplemental rules calendar, the future schedule may obviously dictate which of those get called and which don't. So with that, we're going to move forward, and the clerk will read the caption to House Bill 857.
House Bill 857 by Representative Powell of the 32nd and others to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 9 of Title 12 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to the prevention and control of air pollution so as to prohibit the burning of certain chemically treated wood products. This bill I referred to the Committee on Natural Resources and Environment. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Alan Powell to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen of the House. I bring to you this afternoon House Bill 857, and it does quite simply a very short thing, and I'll tell you, it prohibits any permitting of the burning of creosote railroad ties in a biomass generating plant. And I want to give you a little bit of the history about this and what made this so important. Representative McCall and I brought this bill forward because there's two counties that have been highly impacted by this. Back in 2015, a company came in and wanted to build a generating plant in both the counties, Madison and Franklin County. And they were told, or the county commissioners and the citizens were told, that these plants would be burning biomass, basically forest products, clean type forest products. Well, before the plant was ever constructed or finished, EPA changed the rules about burning of creosote. Forever, and I couldn't tell you how long, creosote burning had been banned by EPA, the federal government. So in 2016, EPA changed the rules of the game. So when these two plants opened up operations back last year, they started burning railroad ties. Now, the two plants, quite frankly, had suffered from certain problems of management. And, they were cited for stormwater runoff. And, I mean, this stuff is such a terrible compound that even when the railroad ties were unloaded next to the plant down in Colbert, it rained on them, and there was a steady stream of black fluid that went in around people's wells, and they were cited for that. And it goes on and on. I could tell you all the other things that happened, but the bottom line is what happened is when they started burning this stuff, the people that lived in close proximity were impacted. Some of them to this day are still calling me because they've had to move out of their homes. Senior citizens have moved to live with their children in other parts, and they want to keep up with what's going on. And that was the reason we had talked, both Representative McCall and myself had talked to EPD. They acknowledged the fact that there were some problems with these plants and how they were doing their operations. And with consultation with EPD, since they can't actively lobby against any industry, they gave us the language. First language I'd looked at was basically giving local governments, as you know, they're always so angst up about preemptions, but this is one I wanted to give the commissioners the authority to approve or disapprove of material to be burned. Well, because of the litigation and the courts couldn't do that. So the next issue was to ban the burning of this type of material. At this particular time, there's no other plant in the state of Georgia that burns creosote. Both Tom and myself, when we were consulted about it, we didn't know you could burn creosote because I don't think many people even knew that EPA had changed the rules of the game in 2016. Now, there is a plant in Dublin, Georgia, supposedly or down in that part of the woods, that they're permitted to burn, maybe, and it's a manufacturing plant, and they wouldn't be burning this biomass to generate power except for their own personal usage. So we agreed to an amendment, as we're usually agreeable, to allow that to happen in that situation, and that was the only amendment put to it. But that, Mr. Speaker, is the gist of this bill. I can assure you that the good folks over in Franklin and Madison County that are suffering from the problems of this, and their county commissioners who have passed resolutions and such as that, would appreciate your favorable consideration for this bill. And that, Mr. Speaker, is the gist of this, and I would be grateful if you'd vote for it.
You have a question, but first the chair wants to make an observation. Members of the House, do you realize what you've just seen? You've just seen a very short presentation as defined by Chairman Powell, who assured me that he would be so fast it would make my head spin.
That's pretty fast, so if there's no serious questions, I'll step aside and ask for your vote.
Please just warn me when you have a long presentation. You have a question if you care to yield. Okay. I'm sure you had a good question, Representative Williams. It will forever go unanswered. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. What purpose does Chairman Martin rise?
A parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Isn't it true that I believe our colleague from Hartwell was trying to channel the former member of this body, Chairman Wendell Willard, there in his presentation this afternoon?
Well, I did somehow Chairman Willard went across my mind while he was up there. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 857. The ayes are 163, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 761.
House Bill 761 by Representative Carter, the 46 and others to be entitled an act to amend Title 46 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to public utilities and public transportation so as to eliminate the percentage limitation as to the amount of investments an electric membership corporation may make. This bill having been referred to the Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Carson to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Folks, I have before you House Bill 761. What this bill does, and this is not the other EMC bill, by the way, we're considering. All this does is it raises the statutory cap in which an EMC may make an investment in a natural gas marketer. The caption says eliminate. Actually, we made a compromise in committee, and we have gone from 15 to 60%. What this does is levels the playing field between an EMC and non-EMC parent. Back in 2002, this General Assembly, after natural gas deregulation in 1997, we came back with, in 2002, to basically provide some consumer protection and relief provisions. This 15% was added. Not many people know why it was added. It could have been done to marry along with some federal rural electric standards, or excuse me, rural utility standards, RUS financing, but it was really unnecessary. We're looking to just raise this percentage and allow some Georgia jobs to stay in Georgia. This keeps the prohibition on cross-subsidization. All loans must be at market rates. This Georgia EMC obviously supports this. You have a letter on your desk, and Georgia Power is neutral on this. I'd very much ask for your favorable consideration. Mr. Speaker, it's a very simple bill, very straightforward, and if there's no questions, I will yield the will.
You have a question if you care to yield.
I'll yield for one question.
Chair recognizes Representative Ridley to your right for a question.
So, gentlemen, yield.
I do, yes, sir.
I just got a quick question. Did you say that it was 15% and you're not sure why it was put in there originally and now we're going to 60?
Yeah, it was put in back in 2002 under House Bill 1568, and what this says is that an EMC can make up to 15% of their net plant investment into a gas marketer. We're raising this to 60%. I had originally wanted to get rid of the percentage, but again, there was no real necessary reason for this regulation. It has nothing to do with cross-subsidization or anything like that. It was married off of a federal regulation that was unnecessary at the time, definitely unnecessary now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. I'd appreciate this body's favorable support, and I yield the well.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute. The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 761 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machines. What purpose does Representative Carpenter rise?
Parliamentary.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that I understand complicated utility matters that affect just one organization?
You don't really want me to answer that, do you? Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of House Bill 761. The ayes are 158. The nays are 7. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 901.
House Bill 901 by Representative Chokus of the 138th and others to be entitled an act to amend Part 1 of Article 1 of Chapter 23 of Title 50 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to general provisions regarding the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority so as to provide for the power and make loan commitments and loans to local governments. This bill having referred to the Committee on Natural Resources and Environment. The committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Chokus to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I bring before you today House Bill 901. The Georgia Environmental Finance Authority makes loans to local governments for the purpose of land conservation. When we passed the Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Act last year, we inadvertently left out NGOs, non-governmental organizations. This cleanup legislation simply adds NGOs back to the code. There is no cost to the state because these loans are federally funded, and I have placed on your desk several examples of loans that the NGOs have done in the past for land conservation. If there are no questions, I respectfully ask for your favorable consideration to HB 901.
You have no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 901 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machines. Would you see if you can find these three on either of these? Now, I found 929, 959, and 927.
I think those are on the supplemental.
Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of House Bill 901. The ayes are 165, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 991. Okay, Betsy.
House Bill 991 by Representative Knight of the 130th and others to be entitled an act to amend Title 31 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to health so as to provide for transparency relating to state health care plans and its contractors. This bill having been referred to the Special Committee on Access to Quality Health Care, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Hatchett to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to practice the 5 Bs. Be brief, brother, be brief. House Bill 991 creates the Health Care Transparency and Accountability Oversight Committee to review the performance and conduct of all state health care plan contractors and subs. The committee will be composed of a physician, a pharmacist, and a consumer member of the state health benefit plan chosen by the governor, 6 members of the General Assembly, 2 appointed by the governor, 2 by the speaker, and 2 by the lieutenant governor. The reason that we are doing this is to allow us some access to these contracts that we have had trouble getting. If there are any questions, Mr. Speaker, I will take them.
You have no questions.
Thank you. Appreciate your favorable consideration.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 991 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of House Bill 991. The ayes are 166, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. What purpose does Chairman Hatchett rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess it's a parliamentary inquiry, but it's also an announcement. Somebody left this mug on my desk, and it's not my shade of lipstick, so maybe somebody can come get it.
Okay.
Let's wait and see whose it is. We're waiting to see who comes.
Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 929.
House Bill 929 by Representative Smith of the 133rd and others to be entitled an act to amend Part 1 of Article 2 of Chapter 8 of Title 12 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to general provisions relative to solid waste management so as to provide for post-closure groundwater monitoring. This bill having referred to the Committee on Natural Resources and Environment, that committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Representative Vance Smith to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, this bill deals with surface impoundment areas. And if you have the bill out and you go to Section 2 of the bill, that's where the real meat of the bill is. What it does, there's a post-closure inspection and care of these ground surface impoundment areas for 30 years. Number 2, there will be monitoring the groundwater. This information that is received will be put on the website, and it stipulates in the bill that the information that is put on the website will be put where a person without a science background will be able to read the information, so reasonably understood. And also, EPD will do inspections once a year up until the closure, and then once the closure comes, there will be an inspection every 5 years. So Sure would appreciate your favorable consideration. If there are any questions, Mr. Speaker, be glad to answer. If not, I'd appreciate your vote.
You've got a couple of questions if you care to yield.
I'll take one, yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Chairman Watson to your right for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Is it not true that in the budget that we passed yesterday that we allocated some money for 2 environmental engineers to work on this exact issue across the state?
Yes, sir, $500,000 to add some people for EPD to take care of these inspections.
Thank you.
Appreciate the question. Mr. Speaker, I'll yield the will and ask for your favorable consideration.
We had another member that wished to be heard on the bill. The chair recognizes the minority leader of the House, Leader Trammell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is about coal ash. It's a problem that tens of millions of toxic coal ash sit in Georgia on top of aquifers unlined. And today will pass without us taking up legislation that would address the danger of that situation. So I'm really here not today to talk about the missed opportunity. But while we have this bill on the floor that deals with testing, the reason we test is to see if there's something wrong. But you know what? When you know that there's something wrong, there's a call to action. And when you know that there's something wrong and you don't do anything about it, that's inaction. Our job is to protect Georgians. And the fact is, today will come and go, and we will not have done what we could have done to protect Georgians when it comes to toxic coal ash. That's all I'm going to say. But I do want you to hear from 2 other people on this subject. Good afternoon. Thank you for sponsoring House Bill 756, Conditions for the Issuance of a Permit for Solid Waste or Special Waste Handling for Coal Combustion Unit or Landfill. This is such an important issue for our state, and especially for the residents in Monroe County, Georgia. I attended a community meeting last night held to inform the public of the plan to shut down or cap in place the ash pond and to provide information regarding testing being done by Altamaha River Keepers. I live less than a half mile from the ash pond, the same house I grew up in since I was 4 years old. My well was tested in October 2019 and including alarming levels of chemicals like hexavalent chromium and strontium. My 16-year-old daughter was diagnosed with cancer when she was 4. She is a thriving teenager now, thank the Lord. I'm concerned based on the results of the many wells that have been tested in Juliet. I pray that you will continue your fight for these bills and you will echo the voices of hundreds of people who attended last night's meeting and saying, enough is enough. We need to do the right thing. My daughter's life should not be a calculated risk that is allowed to take. You have the power to enforce the excavation of the ash pond in a manner that will protect our future water. One more voice, and I'm done. In August of 2019, I bought 0.93 acres in Juliet, Georgia, in Monroe County, moved into a house, paying in full cash for the house and the land. I spent every penny I had to accomplish this. My plan was to live out the rest of my life here, mortgage-free, happy, and in peace. I had some knowledge that there was some potential water contamination issues before I bought the property, requested realtors have the well tested to make sure the water was good. They put in a request through the local environmental department who took a water sample and sent it to the UGA extension offices. I was told it came back clean and unfortunately did not read the report, but took the word of my realtors as they knew exactly what my concerns were. I just, in the past couple of weeks, came to realize that the water test was for bacteria and did not include the chemical contaminants for Plant Share's coal ash ponds. I take partial responsibility because it was my duty to double check that my request had been honored, but I naively went forward and signed on the dotted line. At this time, my well still has not been tested for chemical contaminants, but due to the proximity of my property to the plant, I must assume that it is contaminated and take the necessary safety precautions to protect myself, my daughter, any visitors I have, and my dog. I cannot express how important this is to me, my family, and my neighbors. I am normally not a radical or hysterical person, but since I've come to know the seriousness of the situation we are all facing, I've come to fear the water in my house. Every time I look at my water faucet, it's like I'm staring at the face of a venomous snake. Every time I wash my hands, I wonder if they are actually clean, and every time I take a shower, I wonder if I have just bathed in deadly chemicals. Nobody should have to live with these fears. Nobody. Please help us. We are not big enough to get this done on our own. Any consideration you can give to this matter is greatly appreciated. Testing. When we know that people need help, our job is to help. And it's not to leave Georgians as human canaries in a coal mine. Mr. Speaker, I yield the well.
Gentleman has yielded the well. What purpose does Representative Vance Smith rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, isn't it true that I too have communicated with people in that area and also communicated with the riverkeeper in that area and had several conversations and had asked for information that I would walk personally over to EPD and work with him? And isn't it true that it took 10 days for me to get that information from him, and I turned that information over to EPD, and as of yet I've not been contacted to say that any contaminants were there that would cause a well to be closed. So I've also had that great communication down there with those people. Thank you.
What purpose does Chairman Lynn Smith rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Parliamentary
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that House Bill 29 is the result of efforts by all the people involved in this issue, members of the Natural Resource and Environment Committee, and from the citizens around the state? Is that not true?
I know that that there's been no higher priority given by your committee than to this issue this session.
Further parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true also that the presence of the EPD during the closing time and for the several years after that, one of the reassurances we feel is very important for the citizens of Georgia, is it not true that the EPD has the authority to stop all operations and require the offenders to remediate the land?
If the lady so states, I'm sure she knows whereof she speaks. What purpose does Representative Jasmine Clark rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that monitoring pollution after the pollution has already happened does not protect people from being exposed to the pollution?
If the lady so states, I'm sure she believes that to be true.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 929 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? Have all members now voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 929, the ayes are 113, the nays are 52. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 959.
House Bill 959 by Representative Meeks of the 178th and others, be titled an act to amend Code Section 12.8.39 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to waste management, cost reimbursements, and surcharges. This bill having referred to the Committee on National Resources. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Meeks to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring for you today consideration of House Bill 959, a legislation that will increase the tipping fees paid to local municipalities for the for dumping coal ash. One thing I would note, we have a substitute from the Rules Committee. Is it appropriate to discuss that at this time? Okay. If you'll note on the second page, line 35, the original bill would reduce to 10% the fees that are collected for what the community could use those for. Currently, it was at 50. Bill passed out of committee at 10. The Rules Committee amended that to 40% of the fees collected shall be used for the list of activities below in the community for those for that increase. So, Mr. Chairman, that's the crux of the bill. It increases the tipping fees for coal ash to equal that of municipal waste going to landfills. Mr. Chairman, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
You have a few questions if you care to yield.
Yes, sir, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the minority leader of the House to your left for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that what animates the bill and the reason this bill is a good idea is because coal ash is toxic and a danger to the communities in which coal ash is deposited?
I believe the gentleman knows of what he speaks.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Chairman Rhodes to your right for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Is it not true this bill will deter coal ash from being dumped in our municipal landfills from outside of our state?
Yes, sir. The gentleman knows of what he speaks. As many members of this chamber are aware, several of our neighbors around the country are under order to excavate their coal ash ponds, and without raising this dumping fee or tipping fee in the local communities, we're liable to be receiving more out-of-state ash. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate
no further questions.
Thank you, sir. I yield the will.
Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to withdrawing the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is withdrawn. Is there any objection to adopting the substitute offered by the Committee on Rules? The chair hears none. The Rules Committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 959 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 959. The ayes are 162, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. The clerk will read the caption to House Bill 927.
House Bill 927 by Representative Parsons, the 44th and others, to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 9 of Title 12 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to air quality so as to provide for the reporting of any unpermitted release. This bill has been referred to the Committee on Natural Resources and Environment. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Chairman Parsons to present the bill.
Thank you, Chairman Ralston. House Bill 927 relates to the use of ethylene oxide as a condition of a permit from the EPD. It does two things. The bill requires that any release, any leak of ethylene oxide is reported to EPD within 24 hours. And it also requires that EPD place on their website any information related to those reports. It's a good bill for the people in the areas where any use of ethylene oxide is located, and it's the people in many areas, especially in the area of Smyrna, are very happy about this, and was very happy this morning to receive, I think, about 30 calls from the area, very excited about the passage of this bill. And I would ask for your favorable consideration, Mr. Speaker. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to take them.
There are no questions. Well, there is one question now. Chair recognizes Representative Belton for a question.
Do you yield for questions, sir?
Yes, I do.
Is it true, sir, that this bill will ensure better health air quality in the state of Georgia?
Yes, that's absolutely true, and people around the state will be very happy to have the passage of this bill. Thank you for the question.
There are no more questions.
Would appreciate your favorable consideration of House Bill 927.
Gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas were 162, the nays were 0. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 1070. House Bill 1070.
House Bill 1070 by Representative Gaines, the 117th and others, to be entitled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 3 of Title 44, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to condominiums so as to provide new insurance policy disclosure requirements. This bill having referred to the Committee on Insurance, that committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Gaines to present the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Water damage claims in condominiums often result in confusion from all parties, so House Bill 1070 is intended to assist both the unit owner and the condo association by providing a mechanism for each party to request in writing a copy of the certificate of insurance or the contact information for the assigned adjuster from the other party. Madam Speaker, I'm happy to answer any questions.
There is a question. The chair recognizes Representative Walensky for a question.
Thank you. Does the representative yield?
I do.
Can you just clarify in a little more detail? Sorry, probably first time seeing this. What more specifically it does in terms of?
Sure. Yeah. So all the bill does is it allows either party to request in writing from the other party, which it would be again both the condo owner and the condo association would be able to request from the other party. And the other party would have 5 days to provide the information, which is a certificate of insurance or the assigned adjuster's contact information. That's all the bill does.
Thank you. Does the representative yield one more time?
Sure.
Thank you. So is this just clarifying the big issue between homeowner associations and the owner of who's covering the insurance?
Condos and condo associations. It's only water damage claims. Any other questions?
Chair recognizes Representative Cannon for a question.
Thank you. Do you yield?
I do.
And so does this bill create any further action on either party or allow for any punitive nature?
All the bill does is it requires the other party to provide that information within 5 days.
Do you further yield?
Sure.
And so what would be the reason why a condo association, a homeowner association, would need it within 5 business days? What does that provide?
Because in water damage claims, time is of the essence. And so that's why it only applies to water damage cases. That's why the bill has 5 days.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield the will.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas were 157, the nays were 4. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 93. House Bill 93.
House Bill 93 by Representative Jones, the 167th, and others, to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 5 of Title 12, the official code of Georgia annotated relating to control of water pollution and surface water use. This bill having referred to the Committee on Natural Resources and Environment. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
The chair recognizes Representative Williams to present the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, bring to you today House Bill 93. Just a little simple bill, and I'll be the 3 Bs also. It just requires that when they do the dewatering of the coal ash ponds, that they give the local jurisdiction written notice so that they can let people know that the coal ash ponds are being dewatered. Be glad to take any questions.
There are no questions.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask for your favorable consideration.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. For what purpose does Representative Jones rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Madam
State
Speaker.
your inquiry.
Isn't this the proper way to present a bill the way Representative Williams just did it?
I'm sure the gentleman knows of which he speaks. Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas were 165, the nays were 0. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 833. House Bill 833.
House Bill 833 by Representative Stevenson, the 164th, be entitled an act to amend Title 52 of the official code of Georgia annotated relating to waters of the state, ports, and watercraft so as to authorize the department to promulgate rules and regulations. This bill then referred to the Committee on Natural Resources and Environment. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Petrie to present the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I bring to you HB 833, a bill that simply clarifies a marine vessel's ability to overnight in our marine waters, short-term, overnight, and long-term anchoraging. Long-term acreage described in this bill would be defined as that which is over 14 days cumulatively, and that would require a permit from the DNR Commissioner. Short-term anchoring would be up to 14 and including 14 days. Anchoring would be allowed except within 300 feet of a marina, 150 feet of a marine structure, which would include private and public docks, or within 500 feet of an approved commercial shellfish growing area, which, as you know, we established in legislation last year. Madam Speaker, that is simply what this bill does. I stand for any questions if that is necessary.
There are no questions.
Thank you.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas were 157, the nays were 6. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill. For what purpose does Chairman Smith rise?
Thank you. Parliamentary inquiry, please.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that I wish to thank our Representative Petrie for presenting this bill? And he did that on behalf of Representative Ron Stevens, who is not here today. So I want to thank these gentlemen for what they did for Representative Stevens. Thank you.
As the woman states. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 906. House Bill 906.
House Bill 906 by Representative Taylor, the 173rd and others to be entitled an act to amend Part 2 of Article 3, Chapter 3, Title 12 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the Heritage Trust Program so as to condition the method to utilize for conveyance of preserved property. This bill having referred to the Committee on Natural Resources and Environment. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Chairman Taylor to present the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Good afternoon. Today I bring you House Bill 906. It's a Department of Natural Resource bill that deals with how the state handles state-owned, specifically classified, and historically protected properties. The Heritage Trust Act established heritage preserve designations for state-owned properties. This designation is extremely restrictive, and when the designation is placed on a property, it must remain on the property in perpetuity. Unfortunately, the state has several unusable and irreparable facilities with the Heritage Preserve designation. They are of no operational use, and they would require substantial resources to maintain or redevelop. Some of these properties are of interest to other parties, such as local governments, nonprofits, and even private entities. This bill is to allow certain properties with a Heritage Preserve designation to be conveyed to a partner. It includes a requirement that no more than 15 acres total can be removed. The remainder will continue to have the Heritage Preserve designation. The conveyance would ensure the land is still protected through a conservation easement, which contains the strict protection value central to the Heritage Trust Act. Why is the state doing this, and what will the state gain? Continuation of the preservation of the property and care and upkeep to the property by an interested and concerned entity at no taxpayer expense. The conveyance would be in exchange for other land, property, or an outright purchase. This will not be an easy process, but it will be very transparent because it requires the conveyance to meet certain requirements and have a final approval. The DNR must submit a request to the Board of Natural Resources for approval. A perpetual conservation easement must be placed on the property in question. The Board of Natural Resources must hold a public hearing on the DNR's request and determine if that is the best interest of the state. With an affirmation vote from the Board of Natural Resources, the request must be approved by the State Properties Commission and then a final approval by the Georgia General Assembly in a conveyance authorization resolution. DNR must file a notice of heritage preserve removal and conversion easement placement with the Secretary of State and the Superior Court of the affected county and counties. A maximum total of 15 acres via one request or multiple requests can cumulatively ever be removed from a current heritage preserve property using this process. Why do we need this bill? As I stated, there are several unusable, irreparable heritage preserve designated DNR properties that are of no operational use and would require substantial resources to maintain. DNR can intentionally manage property by allocating their resources to enhance user experience and conserve the natural resource presence. There will be an open and transparent process that allows for a more efficient change of use process. It increases a partnership that the DNR can have with local governments, nonprofits, and private entities that are committed to this preservation. This legislation would allow the facilities to go to good use, be conserved, and be assured they would be properly maintained, as the property itself would still be in a protected conservation easement. There have been properties that could have been saved if this legislation had been in place. Finally, HB 906 preserves the spirit and purpose of a heritage preserve while working with caring partners to turn a previously unusual property into a new opportunity. This is a good bill. It helps preserve our heritage through our historical properties. Therefore, I ask for your favorable consideration of House Bill 906. Madam Speaker, if there are no questions, I will yield the well.
You have questions?
All right, I'll yield.
The chair recognizes Chairman Silcox for a question.
Does the gentlelady yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Isn't it true, Representative Taylor, that this will actually preserve these historic properties by offering this multi-step process for any changes?
Yes, ma'am, you are correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Beasley Teague for a question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will the gentlelady yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Will the persons that are going to have this designation changed so that they can fix the properties up, will they pay taxes on it?
Yes, they will. It is not excused from tax. If a government gets it, they would, like if a county or a city obtains it, but if someone else does, they would have regular application.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Thomas of the 56th for a question.
Does the gentlewoman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Does this legislation have the support of the, like Atlanta, does this bill have the support of groups like the Atlanta Preservation?
I'm not sure who all supports it, but I have a piece of property in Thomasville that wants this very much because they want to preserve a building that the state can't afford to maintain, and this will help that. There are several properties. I will tell you of a sad one, which was in the Savannah area, that was falling apart. If we had this bill, it could have been saved. So,
okay. Thank you.
And final question, the chair recognizes Representative Williams of the 37th for a question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will the
To your
gentlelady
right.
yield?
Yes, okay, there you are.
Isn't it true that I've heard from a colleague in Savannah who's been involved with Ossabaw Island for years that is concerned that some of the people who have worked to preserve some of these islands and some of these areas are concerned that private folks might come in and develop it against the will of the folks who've been working to preserve the properties?
I think they're misinterpreting the purpose of the bill. I have spoken to and corresponded with several folks from that area. I will tell you, and as the bill stated, the maximum property that could ever be involved in this is only 15 acres, and it's still in a conservation easement. And this is not to open doors. It is very restricted. I went a little more than I usually do to go into how much you have to go through to get a property redone. And I will say there is no one that cared about preservation in this state more than Marguerite Williams, who has now passed. And her family is wanting this so that these properties can be maintained.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no more questions.
Thank you. I yield the well.
The lady has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of the bill. The yeas were 160, the nays were 7. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 720. House Bill 720.
House Bill 720 by Representative Saints, the 180th, to be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 10 of Title 17 of the official code of Georgia and Taylor relating to procedure for sentencing and imposition of punishment. This bill having referred to the Committee on Judiciary Non-Civil, that committee recommended that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
The chair recognizes Representative Sains to present the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. House Bill 720 addresses the new environment our state's public safety network is in after the decision of Park v. State last year and ensuring compliance for our state assessed dangerous sexual predators. One of the major provisions of the bill allows for GPS tracking for twice adjudicated sexual predators who are much higher risk of being leveled a dangerous sexual predator. It also provides for great work Representative Mandy Ballinger has been working on in terms of the Offender Risk Review Board. It names them to clarify what they do, which is level our sexual offenders. And this will allow for clarity and also a more comprehensive report through making sure they have access to all departments' information on that sexual offender. It also clarifies that that a statutory rape defense, any individual under the age of 16 that cannot that has a claim of consent that cannot be used as a defense for prosecution. It also, and Representative Scott Holcomb has worked greatly on this, and I think we'll speak to it, the creation of the statewide sexual assault tracking system, which will ensure that the most prevalent and useful tool in prosecuting our state's sexual crimes when available is kept safe and tracked well. If there's any questions, I'll yield.
There are no questions.
Thank you.
The gentleman has yielded the well. The chair recognizes Representative Kennard to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today I rise in opposition to HB 720. To be clear, I support holding someone accountable for their wrongdoing and crimes of this nature. They are particularly harmful, and I believe we should also protect our larger society with effective security measures. As a director of a transitional reentry program that works with justice-involved men and women, we occasionally have someone in our program who is on the registry seeking rehabilitation. It is my professional opinion that there are already strong, sufficient, and appropriate safeguards to protect the community. Someone on the registry must check in with the local sheriff's office if there is a change of address. If they change jobs, they must also check in with the sheriff, and they must annually check in on their birthday. In addition, the registered individual cannot live within 1,000 feet of a school, daycare, church, or park. The registry is public record on a state-funded, highly accessible website. Any concerned citizen, any concerned parent can know who lives in proximity to them. To further penalize beyond these already stringent penalties with a residential warning sign and to impose a lifetime sentence of probation, I find unduly punitive and stigmatizing. Research proves that the offending individual who is further penalized and stigmatized will cease to respond positively to treatment because there's a sense of futility. HB 720, along with other legislation created this session, is an about-face to the criminal justice reform policies of the previous administration that have been working to make Georgia more just and more safe. Georgia already has more of its citizens on probation than any other state. We are 4 times the national average. Our very own Community Supervision Commissioner, Michael Nell, has told us that probation is not effective after 24 months. After that, it only serves as a trap to violate. It's also worth noting that probation administered by for-profit companies is a $30 million business in Georgia. To be clear, I support holding someone accountable for their wrongdoing, and crimes of this nature are particularly harmful. And I believe we should also protect our larger society with effective security measures. But I also believe that we want to offer a path forward for the guilty party and an opportunity for redemption. The Southern Center for Human Rights, Georgia Justice, they oppose these measures. Department of Community Supervision, they have a lot of concerns about the impact on their agency that is already buckling under an overwhelming caseload. In deference to time, I yield the well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The gentleman has yielded the well. For what purpose does Representative Saines rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that under the reforms that were done under Governor Deal, there was a more lenient system of ensuring that we had the capacity to monitor dangerous sexual predators, and that this bill ensures that after 10 years of probation, those who have acted in good faith have a state-required review of their probation, and that judicial discretion is in place to allow for that probation, if applicable, be terminated?
As the gentleman states, the chair recognizes Representative Holcomb to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to talk about the second half of the bill. For about the last year, the Georgia Sexual Assault Response Team Project State Expert Committee has been meeting and thinking about other reforms that we can make to Georgia's sexual assault policies. That committee includes members from the Prosecuting Attorneys Council, the Council of Superior Court Judges, law enforcement agencies, statewide sexual assault nurse examiners, assistant district attorneys, and the Georgia Sexual Assault Kit Initiatives Project Coordinator. And if you turn to page 13 of the bill, that's where this section starts. It was previously House Bill 1076, but that has been in toto added into this legislation. The first thing that it does is, back in 2004, the General Assembly required each judicial circuit to establish a sexual assault protocol, to come up with policies and procedures for how sexual assault cases would be handled in each jurisdiction. What we have found is that many jurisdictions are not in compliance. So the first thing is in section 5-1 is to require compliance by having each judicial circuit inform the governor, lieutenant governor, speaker of the House, and chief justice of any non-compliant jurisdictions. We hope that that will force each jurisdiction to actually adopt and implement a protocol. The next thing that it does that's significant is that this bill will implement for the state of Georgia a tracking system for every sexual assault kit, meaning that when a victim reports to either a sexual assault crisis center or to a hospital and evidence is taken and put into a kit, it will then be tracked from that point all the way through to prosecution, which I think is something that we need, and it's something that we've been working on for a long time. And in lines 448 and 449, you'll see that it allows victims of sexual assault to anonymously track or receive updates regarding the status of their sexual assault kits. The next major part of the bill is that in coordination with the FBI, they have a program called the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, VICAP for short, and it is the most violent serial murderers and serial sexual offenders. I've worked with the FBI to craft language so that way we would have data sharing from our law enforcement officials with the FBI to try to solve cases. So that VICAP part is also very significant and is in section 5-5. And then finally, the last part of the bill is with respect to sexual abuse of patients by doctors. It is very, very rare, but it does happen. And under this legislation, it would force the board, the medical board, to take action. Right now, they don't have to take action, and in the past, they would refer a doctor for counseling if a doctor sexually assaulted a patient. So this magnifies and increases, and I think improves the response that we'll have on that issue, and it's supported by the Medical Association of Georgia and others. So I wanted to just walk you through those changes because I think that they are significant and worthy of favorable consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions on the sections that I discussed.
There are no questions.
Thank you.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. There is a minority report. The chair recognizes Minority Leader Trammell to present the minority report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I want to make clear from the outset that I completely support the section of the bill that Representative Holcomb just talked about and just described. But when we get to this portion of the session, when it's late, you get bills that are combined together. And so sometimes you have to make a choice between a bill that combines some really bad things with some good policy, like Representative Holcomb's policy that is incorporated in this bill. So my remarks are going to be very succinct on this. The heart of the issue that's the problem of this bill is lines 64 to 66. And that is that we are creating a life sentence for a whole new section of crimes. It's 2 strikes and you get a life sentence. And not all of those crimes that are enumerated below are equal in nature and magnitude. And this is a step backwards. I mean, if we decide that any of these crimes need to be sentenced in a more harsh manner, then we should deal with those crimes individually. But what we should not do is tack on at the end probation for life. Because probation may not sound bad. It's like, oh, it's just probation. But you are under the supervision and control of the state when you're on probation. And if you get a traffic ticket, or you go and you commit another offense that's a misdemeanor in nature, you can have the balance of your probation revoked. So this is a life sentence bill. And if you're for life sentences, you can be in support of the bill. But if you want to take a step back and carefully consider, I ask that you do that before you vote upon this bill. Madam Speaker, at this time, I would yield the balance of the time for the minority report from the gentleman from Sandy Springs, Representative McLaurin.
Chair recognizes Representative McLaurin for the remainder of the minority report time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll start very quickly with a story. Around 2008 or 2009, you'll have to fact check me on this, I had a grad school project to come to the Georgia General Assembly from Athens and sit in on any committee of my choice and watch any bill of my choice and report back on what I saw. And I went to the Judiciary Non-Civil Committee, the committee that I sit on now. And I watched as we passed the super speeder law. Y'all remember, we added $200 to speeding fines, right? And after about 15 minutes of the sponsor's presentation, the question was, how did you pick $200 as the fine amount? Well, an aide walked up and whispered in the representative's ear, and after considering, the representative said, "A little bird just told me that that seemed like the fair and just amount." And then a judge spoke for about 10 minutes and tried to fit as much words into a speech as I normally do when I get up here, and she goes, "You don't understand. This isn't going to change behavior. People are going to keep speeding. They're going to get caught. They're not going to be able to pay the fine. They're going to get trapped in the system." And the committee said, "Well, if you can't afford to speed, then why do you speed?" She said, "What do you think I tell the people who come into my courtroom?" Well, I got on the elevator with her on the way down, and she's just shaking her head talking to somebody. She said, "I did my best. I tried to tell them what would happen, but it didn't work." Now, I don't have any data for you on super speeder, but what I do know is this. We have a legacy of criminal justice reform in this state that I am proud of. As a Georgian, as a current member, the Deal criminal justice reforms are one of, to me, the bright lights of governance in our state. And my commitment when I came and ran for office was, that was one of my #1 priorities. I asked the Speaker to be placed on judiciary non-civil. He was gracious enough to put me there, because that's the work that we need to be doing. But it's hard work, and one of the reasons it's hard work is because sometimes the people that you're advocating for, that you're talking about, are not the most popular people. I think that's the hardest part about our jobs, is that when we're put to the test to ask the hard questions about what should happen to people who nobody is publicly going to stick up for. And in this case, you know the play Les Miserables, Jean Valjean, right? Reject of society. Nobody wants to worry about what's going on with him because he committed a crime. So he's on the outside of what we consider to be the in-group in society. That's these folks. These folks are the ones who have committed some, in some cases, pretty heinous crimes. But like the leader just said to you, not every crime is created equal. And we can't just do something because it sounds right, because the narrative's simplistic. Well, you know, they did a really bad thing, so lock them up for life and just throw them away. That can't be our attitude. Our job is the hard one. We have to be sensitive to what the crime deserves. Proportionality. Does the punishment fit the crime? And the story of this bill is that we were putting lifetime ankle monitors on people who committed some of these crimes, but the Supreme Court ruled that it violates the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution to put a lifetime ankle monitor on somebody if they're not subject to a valid sentence. So what did we do in our wisdom? Instead of saying, well, maybe we should rethink whether ankle monitoring is the best way to achieve our ends, you heard the gentleman, Representative Kennard, speak to other ways that we restrict the lives of people committed to these crimes. Instead of doing that, you know what we did? We flipped it the other way. We said, well, why don't we just make every sentence a life sentence? Then we won't have that Fourth Amendment problem. We can put an ankle monitor on anybody. That's what this bill does. That's the legacy that we're going to be moving in the direction of. Not the Deal criminal justice reform legacy, which is less restriction, more thoughtful, proportional, evidence-based approaches. Instead, we just put a list of crimes that now they get a life sentence because we had a logistical constitutional problem, just a small constitutional problem with the way we wanted to do business. That's the cart before the horse. I don't know how many metaphors for backwards I could use, but it's all of them. What we're asking you to do today is to think about proportionality. We're asking you to think about the way that this process should be done. And I have the greatest respect for the chairman of the Judiciary and Non-Civil Committee, but I do not want to do policy where we say the result is going to be this, and we're going to get there no matter what, even if it violates our sensibilities. I'll tell you one last thing about this that I think is telling about how this bill is put together. We said over and over again in committee, if you're going to extend the maximum sentence for these crimes, you got to go into each code section, every single one of them. You've got to open them up where they have maximum sentences. Some of these have maximum sentences, 10 years, 20 years, whatever. You've got to go into every single one of those code sections and say, the maximum sentence is not 10 years, it's life for every single one of those sentences. You know what we did? None of that. We didn't go into each individual, and there may actually be a logistical problem where courts don't even accept this because they say, you didn't change the maximum sentences, so this life probation language doesn't mean anything because you didn't go in and open up every maximum to make it life. And I think the reason we didn't do that is because we don't want to admit that that's the way we're trying to solve this problem. We don't want to be on record making every single one of these crimes a life sentence because it looks bad. And if your probation gets revoked, guess what? That's life in prison. 30 years before you get to apply for parole if the balance of your probation gets revoked. I just want us to think about what we're doing today. There's going to be a lot of green on that board, but it's not going to be up there without us at least having an opportunity to make us think about it. Thank you very much. I yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. For what purpose does Representative Saines rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that I've twice heard a metaphor of a traffic ticket for offenses that are listed within this bill, including aggravated assault, kidnapping, trafficking an individual for sexual servitude, rape, aggravated sodomy, statutory rape, child molestation, aggravated child molestation, enticing a child for indecent purposes, all listed within the bill, and that this bill also provides what is already utilized as a split sentence to include the ability to put a life probation on the new environment we're created with after the Park v. State decision.
Is that not true? If the gentleman so states, the chair recognizes Chairman Estration to present during the chairman's time.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I know that we have many bills on the calendar today, so I'll just jump right to the point here. A no vote on House Bill 720 will endanger the public in Georgia, will endanger our children, will endanger the citizens of the state. And a lot's been set up here, which I'm afraid are unfortunately mischaracterizations of what brought this bill about and what this bill does. So let me attempt to correct the record here so that you can understand what's actually before you. In 2019, while we were in session, the Park versus the State case, an opinion in Georgia Supreme Court was rendered, which said that sex offenders could no longer be held under certain sex offender conditions if it was beyond the term of their sentence. And as a result, overnight, ankle monitors were cut off across the state of Georgia on sex offenders immediately when that opinion happened. And Georgians and law enforcement looked to us here at the state capitol to address the issue. What do you do when the law only provides for a certain period of time for supervision, but you are dealing with a dangerous individual who poses a risk to the citizens of this state if they are not under certain supervisory conditions? So we got to work immediately on it. And Representative Saines, as a freshman legislator, took on this very difficult issue and introduced House Bill 720. Now, we didn't rush a bill through. It was late in session. We didn't rush a bill through. We studied it throughout the year and came back this session, and Representative Saines did a great deal of work to refine the policy and bring to you much of what's before you here today. And that is this: in order for probation for life to be available, you must have committed your second, what I would submit to you is an inherently dangerous felony. Okay, not within the legal statute, but there's a list of dangerous sexual felonies. For after a second conviction, the court would give probation for life, not a life sentence in prison, as has been said from this well here today. That's incorrect. That's not what the bill says. And on top of it, as Representative Saines identified a moment ago, there is language in the bill which requires judicial review when a sentence is given under those circumstances at the 10-year point, and then every 5 years thereafter to make sure that a continuation on probation is appropriate. Now, did a little birdie give us 10 years? No. The Sex Offender Review Board, SORB, testified in the committee in which I chair that that is the appropriate length of time in order to determine whether or not a person will be a danger to the public going forward. 10 years is a minimum that's necessary in order to make that determination. All right, I served on the Council on Criminal Justice Reform for over 3 years. All right, the cornerstone of criminal justice reform in this state was public safety. That's how I was able to come before you on so many bills, as you recall, in that area and promote good policy that was smart on crime in our state, that really went after the underlying causes of criminal offenses, not just simply having heightened sentences and throwing people in prison and saying, we won't think about that. It was the exact opposite of that. It was, let's be smart about how we address criminal justice in our state. It's the morally right thing to do. Oh, and by the way, it saves the taxpayers money. This bill is completely consistent with criminal justice reform. Because what are we doing? We are saying that for the most serious offenders where public safety is in jeopardy, we are going to allow oversight to ensure that the public is protected. But we are not going to have these excessive sentences or respectfully, these other matters that Representative Kennard tried to bring up to confuse this issue. That's not what this is about. What this is about is protecting the public and there being supervision to see that through. Now, the Sex Offender Review Board also testified in committee that they need additional information in order to make their reviews and make their assessments, to make the best possible recommendation to judges and for ultimate parole conditions and things like that. And that's also included in this bill. I haven't heard anybody speak about that today, but that's a critically important component. Don't we want the Sex Offender Review Board to have as much information as possible so they can determine what tier of threat level the sex offender is? You know, when we have comprehensive legislation in important areas like that, it can be real easy to sit back and say, oh, I see life sentence written in here somewhere. I'm just going to reject it. I'm going to reject it and go campaign and say how I truly believe in criminal justice reform. But, you know, when we're governing and making decisions about what is actually in the best interest of Georgians in this state, what's going to keep them safe, what's going to keep their children safe, we have a responsibility to truly call the bill what it is. And that is a measured approach to ensure public safety, to give judicial discretion where it's needed, and to allow for adequate supervision of offenders who need it. I'll also just commend Representative Holcomb here for his outstanding work. We have had a very busy session, and his legislation is included in this bill because it is so important, his bipartisan measure to allow for sexual assault kits to be tracked in the state of Georgia, for doctors who are known to have committed sexual assaults on their patients to not be able to hold medical licenses in our state. All of this is included in this measure, and any member that puts up a red vote on this bill is voting against all of those important measures. There's no two ways about it. A yes vote is a strong message that we care about ensuring that law enforcement, the courts, Sexual Assault Board, and many other agencies do what needs to be done to protect Georgians. A red vote is a rejection of the underlying public safety concerns that brought this bill about. And I'll leave the choice to you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The gentleman has yielded the well. For what purpose does Representative Clark rise? She waves. For what purpose does Representative Park rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true that Georgia is the #1 state for having the most people on probation and spend about $40 million a year on private probation?
As the gentleman so states. For what purpose does Chairman Petrie rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Madam Speaker, is it not true that according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, in a study that was done in 2005, released sex offenders made up only 5% of the population released from prison in this country, yet accounted for 16% of the arrests for sexual assault or rape in the 9 years following? Is that not true?
As the gentleman so states. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas were 98, the nays were 63. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 1039. House Bill 1039.
House Bill 1039 by Representative Watson of the 172nd and others to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 12 of Title 13 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to automatic renewal provisions so as to provide additional protections for consumers who enter into service contracts. This bill having referred to the Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs, that committee recommends that this bill do pass.
The chair recognizes Chairman Watson to present the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I bring before you today HB 1039. This is dealing with contracts that automatically renew more than 12 months. And it's mainly service contracts. And all we're saying is if you're going to renew that contract for more than 12 months, automatically you need to get permission from the consumer to verify that they do want to renew that contract for multiple years. And that's what the bill will do. It's a good bill. It will probably have lots of ripple effects across our state. I'll be glad to yield for any questions.
There are no questions.
Thank you.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of the bill. The yeas were 163. The nays were 1. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 993. House Bill 993.
House Bill 993 by Representative Dempsey, the 13th, to be titled an act to amend Chapter 10 of Title 31 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to vital records so as to provide for vital records reports and data from state registrar relating to child abuse reports. This bill having referred to the Committee on Juvenile Justice, that committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Chairman Dempsey to present the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, House Bill 993 comes at the request of the Division of Family and Children's Services to allow access to vital records, reports, and data in a timely fashion so that the Division of Family and Children's Services of the Department of Human Services can act upon those. They need the report of abuse or neglect concerning a child or his or her parents or siblings quickly and immediately in all of the cases regarding foster care and our children's safety. This will require an agreement with the Department of Public Health and the division to make sure that this is carried forth. The Department of Public Health has cleared the language and fully supports this measure. If there are any questions, I will take them. If not, I will yield the well and ask for your favorable support.
There are no questions.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield the well.
The lady has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas were 166. The nays were 0. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. I know there ever was 0. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 1015. House Bill 1015.
House Bill 1015 by Representative Wiedauer of the 119th, to be entitled an act to amend Article 5, Chapter 6, Title 12 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to the Georgian Carbon Sequestration Registry so as to provide for the inclusion of building products and construction on the registry. This bill has been referred to the Committee on Natural Resources and Environment. That committee recommends that this bill do pass by committee substitute.
Chair recognizes Representative Wiedauer to present the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Colleagues, today I bring you House Bill 1015. Nature is the living, visible garment of God, and this innovative measure will have Georgia leading the way on developing a voluntary, market-driven solution in addressing carbon offset and sequestration. This measure will expand Georgians' carbon registry to include an array of sustainable building products which will be verified and validated. The rigor of this process will have Georgia producing carbon credits and offsets whose value will further incentivize innovation throughout our state. As the #1 state for forestry in the Union, this is not just a win for Georgia-grown products, but for all the Georgia businesses who choose to use the materials that increase carbon sequestration and deconstruction. I'm excited to bring this legislation as it utilizes a private market solution that puts the state of Georgia at the forefront of this issue. I ask for your favorable consideration of this measure, and Madam Speaker, I'll yield for any questions if there are any.
You do have questions. The chair recognizes Chairman Watson for a question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
Could you tell me how your bill relates to natural supernaturalism?
No response required. The chair recognizes Representative Clark for a question to your left.
Does the gentleman yield?
I do.
Can you just give us an example of these carbon sequestration building materials that we are adding to the code?
Certainly. It can be anything from mass timber to CO2-infused concrete.
Thank
Two
you.
examples. Madam Chair, I'll yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of the bill. The yeas were 156, the nays were 10. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 1017. House Bill 1017.
House Bill 1017 by Representative Laricchio, the 169th, to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 45-985, the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to payment of indemnification for death or disability. This bill has been referred to the Committee on Public Safety and Homeland Security. That committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes Floor Leader Laricchio to present the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This comes from the Georgia Indemnification Commission. The governor is the chairman of that commission. And what this does is clarifies and revises the indemnification payments for those that are killed in the line of duty, law enforcement, prison guards, highway workers. This just makes sure that the indemnification benefit payments go to the proper family members once they apply for them after the death of someone in the line of duty. Madam Chair, that's what the bill does. I'll be glad to take any questions.
There are questions. The chair recognizes Representative Walensky for a question.
Thank you. Does the representative yield?
I do.
Thank you so much for this great bill. Just a quick question. For Section B,
How come it's to the legal guardian and not or the spouse? Was that something that was considered?
It says there on line 15 that the surviving unmarried spouse. Unremarried spouse, I'm sorry.
Yeah, all right.
Still be unmarried.
Chair recognizes Representative Ridley for a question.
Reluctantly, yes, ma'am.
My friend in the well yield.
Get a little bit closer to the microphone. Yes, sir.
All right. I appreciate you bringing this bill. It's a good bill. I just got a question. Is this your first bill?
No, sir. No, sir.
Well,
it has not.
You hadn't been up here all year.
It is my first one this year.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And finally, the chair recognizes Representative Henson for a question. To your left.
Thank you. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks. Are we saying that this spouse, the surviving spouse, must remain unmarried?
No, ma'am, but the intention of an indemnification benefit is to replace the income earner for that unremarried spouse or that widow or widower. And so that you've got 2 years to apply for this after the time of death, but if for whatever reason they had already been separated, divorced, whatever, and they remarry before that time of death or whatever, it just makes sure that that benefit would have went to that person had they not been remarried. And so it just clarifies that, and that's part of what they intended to do with this bill.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, I'm going to yield the well and ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you so much.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All in favor of the passage of the bill will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas were 163, the nays were 0. The bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to H.R. 1163. H.R. 1163.
House Resolution 1163 by Representative Gamble of the 15th, recognizing Georgia Supreme Court Justice Robert Benham and dedicating a bridge in his honor. This resolution was assigned to the Committee on Transportation. That committee recommends that this resolution be adopted by committee substitute.
The chair recognizes Representative Gamble to present the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members of the House, you have before you H.R. 1163, which is our annual road naming bill. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through each individual road naming part, but I want you all to know that they've met the requirements as prescribed by our Transportation Committee to be approved by us at this time. And I would be happy to answer any questions about any of the road namings that we have in this legislation.
There are no questions.
I yield the well. Thank you.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution be adopted? All in favor of the adoption of the resolution will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the adoption of the resolution. The yeas were 166. The nays were 0. The resolution have received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. The clerk will read the caption to H.R. 1300. H.R. 1300.
House Resolution 1300 by Representative Perkle, the 155th, authorizing the change of the use of certain property located in Glynn County, currently dedicated as a heritage preserve. This resolution having been assigned to the Committee on State Properties. That committee recommends that this resolution be adopted.
The chair recognizes Chairman Perkle to present the resolution.
Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. H.R. 1300 was not part of the annual state properties easements and conveyance bill because it involves a heritage preserve property. This case, we must first change the designation from heritage to non-heritage and then convey it to GDOT from DNR. The first of these involves a road widening and roundabout in Glynn County. It sits on a tight curve. The second is a bridge in Murray County that needs replacing. The easement there is 0.194 acres. The other is about 6 acres. DNR states that both projects' change of use is, I quote, imperative and unavoidable necessity for public safety for which no other solution exists. I ask for you to vote for this.
There are no questions.
Thank you.
The gentleman has yielded the well. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this resolution now be adopted? All in favor of the adoption of the resolution will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no. And the clerk will unlock the machine. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine. On the adoption of the resolution, the yeas were 164, the nays were 1. The resolution, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Adopted. The House will be at ease until 4:15.